Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Schola, Gladiatoria. I'm here with Toby Capwell at the Wallace Collection still, and we're looking at one of the swords that's going into the Agincourt exhibition. It's being installed at the moment, and it's one of those rare occasions when we get to see one of these things that you've seen in the museum on countless occasions and seen in books probably as well, but to actually see it outside of the cabinet as a three-dimensional object. And I think Toby will probably agree, you get a really different sense often of these weapons and armour out of the cabinet than you necessarily assume about them in the cabinet. This is a particularly unusual type of medieval sword, I think, in that it's very narrow for its time period. Do you want to tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. This is probably the most curious of all the medieval swords in the collection. We'll see a bit better there. It's quite small, and it's got a really narrow blade, but it still dates from the late 14th century, early 15th century. And one of the things in the exhibition that I was really keen to show is that by the early 15th century, knights and members of the knightly class were not the only ones carrying swords. Everybody had access to swords. And many of the archers at the Battle of Agincourt on the English side would have had swords, bucklers, and other hand weapons to fulfill their crucial role for fighting at close quarters as well as shooting arrows. And this seems to me to be eminently suitable as the kind of sword that you might expect an archer at Agincourt to be carrying. It's light, it's small, it's compact, but the blade is exactly the sort of blade that you would pick up if you expected to be fighting knights in full plate armor at some point or other. And that was a pretty good expectation heading off on the Agincourt campaign. This is a really narrow blade, but I must emphasize, in the hand, it's heavy, it's thick, it's got a thick spine. It's basically a rapier blade, just quite a short one. And you know, it's got almost no cutting potential at all. You know, this is a stabbing spike, and I just really had quite an easy time imagining this sword as the perfect sidearm for an archer at Agincourt, and that's why it's in our archer case.
And I completely agree. If you look at this sword, if we try and hold the edge on at the camera, so that there we go, you can see it's a really thick blade. I'm guessing that's probably about 7-8 millimeters, I would imagine, and it doesn't really distally taper until really quite close to the point. It's essentially a bar. It's a tapered, very thick, pointy bar, a bit like a big rondel dagger, actually.
Right, and the point is still very heavy. It's not even getting much distal taper at the end. It's like a bodkin arrow point, you know, stuck on the end of this sword, which really testifies to its design brief.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, you get similar longswords to this with a similar blade type, sort of type 17, I would say, of the so-called Sempak family. This is essentially hexagonal section. It's got no fullers. It's hexagonal section, and then about 2/3 of the way down transforms into a flattened diamond section, or square section. So it's absolutely thrust-centric. So when people are thinking about arming swords and longswords in this period as being cut and thrust weapons, some of them really are practically estocks. They're practically thrust-only weapons.
Yeah, already in the late 14th century, you've got that thrusting fighting technique with now being advocated with the longsword, and someone has just said, let's take all of that and put it into an arming sword type blade. You know, this has got the strength to be half-swording and to be getting in to those armored fighting techniques that we associate exclusively with knights and men-at-arms fighting each other. But equally, if an archer is expecting to have to fight those guys, he needs to know those techniques as well.
Yeah, they need to overcome the armour somehow. If you're going to be thrusting into people's armpits and groins and places where there's mail or padding, and you want to stab into the gaps and bypass the plate armor, this is the kind of blade to do that.
Yeah, this really strikes me as a sword that is as much designed specifically to get through armor as something like a poleaxe. You know, this is someone making this sword knows very well that a cutting sword is a pretty poor choice against armor. You know, slashing away at armor isn't going to really get you anywhere. So they've jettisoned that capacity altogether and gone for what they know is going to work.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Toby.
Yep. It's going in the case. If you can, come see the exhibition.
Yeah. Cheers, folks. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and feel free to follow us on Facebook.